Sometimes the most powerful shifts happen in silence, in the way you value time, choose peace, and stop needing to prove anything. The world might not notice right away, but your habits already tell the story. You move differently. You speak less, but with more weight. You start doing things not to be seen, but because they feel right. And without trying, you outgrow what once felt necessary. You begin to care less about being recognized and more about being rooted. Less about applause, more about alignment. The need to compete fades, and in its place grows a quiet standard, one that shapes how you show up, spend your time, and carry yourself. Today, we're looking at the subtle things that quietly whisper you've already stepped into the upper class. Let's dive in. You value peace over noise. You begin to realize that peace is the new luxury. You no longer crave loud spaces or feel the urge to be seen at every event. Your time becomes more valuable than your status. You start spending more moments in stillness, not because you're bored, but because you've outgrown the chaos. And that shift, though subtle, is one of the first signs you no longer need the noise to feel alive. You protect your time. The upper class understands that time is the most limited currency, and once you start treating your time that way, guarding it, protecting it, sharing it intentionally, you've already stepped into a higher level of living. You say no more often. You distance yourself from drama. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-preservation. You spend your weekends with intention, not in a rush to escape reality. That's not just maturity, that's a shift in class. You no longer try to prove it. You don't look at money the same way anymore. You no longer buy things to prove your worth. In fact, the more you earn, the less you feel like showing it. You start to invest in silence. You choose simplicity over spectacle. You value things that last, quality over quantity. You stop chasing upgrades and begin appreciating stability. These aren't just habits of wealth, they're reflections of quiet confidence. You listen more, talk less. Your relationship with people changes too. You start listening more, speaking less, observing before reacting. There's a calmness that develops when you no longer feel the need to be the loudest in the room. You let others talk. You let them explain. You don't compete in conversations, you hold space. And that shift is noticed even if no one says it out loud. It's a quiet power that doesn't need validation. You spend with purpose. You also start spending differently, not just on what you buy, but why you buy it. You find yourself spending more on health, education, and peace of mind. You're willing to pay more for better food, better sleep, and better service, not because you want to brag, but because you understand the cost of stress. You begin to realize that wealth isn't about what you can afford. It's about what you no longer tolerate. You buy less, but better. You invest in fewer things, but better things. You'd rather own one well-made item than 5 that fall apart. You no longer shop out of boredom, you shop with purpose. And that restraint is powerful. It's not that you can't afford to indulge, it's that you've redefined what indulgence means. Luxury to you becomes more about comfort and quality than recognition. You handle problems calmly. There's also a change in how you think about problems. You don't panic the same way. You pause, you assess, you handle things calmly. You've built systems, financial, emotional, even spiritual, that carry you through uncertainty. And while others may still operate in reaction mode, you've learned to live in response mode. That subtle difference changes everything. It's a sign you've stepped into something more solid, something less frantic. You enjoy simplicity. You begin to build a life around quiet joys, morning routines, long walks, good books, deep conversations. You're not chasing every new trend or trying to stay relevant. You've found your rhythm. And even if the world doesn't notice it, you feel that sense of internal alignment, that quiet clarity. That's upper class energy. You stop competing. You also stop keeping score. You no longer measure your life against others. You're not competing with neighbors, coworkers, or people online. You know what matters to you, and that's enough. You've created a lane of your own. You drive in it peacefully while others race. You cruise. That ease, that self-trust, is one of the most powerful shifts of all. You give without needing credit. And then there's generosity, not just with money, but with your presence. You start giving more quietly, intentionally, without needing a spotlight. You help where you can without keeping track. Because real wealth doesn't need credit. It doesn't seek applause, it just flows. You understand that giving isn't about status, it's about purpose. You share because you've reached a place where you no longer feel lack. You design a home for peace, your home changes too. It becomes a sanctuary, not a showroom. You design your space for comfort, not approval. You light candles for yourself. You keep things organized because peace has become a priority. You value quiet mornings, slow evenings, and soft places to land. That's not luxury for show, that's luxury for the soul. You choose wellness over image. You're no longer obsessed with looking rich, you're focused on being well. That difference separates you from the crowd. You don't need every trend, you don't need every upgrade. You've chosen depth over drama, function over flash. And in doing so, you've stepped away from the noise and into a more elevated way of living. You don't explain yourself. There's something elegant about not needing to explain yourself, about no longer trying to convince the world that you're doing fine. That stillness, that contentment, that's what whispers upper class. And the beautiful part, it's not something you buy. It's something you grow into through awareness, through discipline, through inner peace. You move with intention. Even the way you walk changes, the way you carry yourself, the decisions you make, the boundaries you set. You begin to move with purpose, with intention. You don't rush to respond. You don't waste your time on things that drain you. You've grown selective, not out of superiority, but out of clarity. That's not ego, that's evolution. You embrace silence. Your conversations become more thoughtful. You no longer need to speak on every topic. You're okay with silence. You're okay with listening. You've realized that presence matters more than performance. And that shift is not just emotional, it's transformational. It tells the world, without saying a word, that you've elevated beyond survival mode. You no longer chase conflict. You don't get caught in petty battles anymore. You've learned to walk away from anything that costs you your peace. You don't chase arguments. You don't explain yourself repeatedly. You've realized that the need to be right is often the quickest way to stay stuck, and that emotional maturity places you above the noise. You become quietly powerful. The more you evolve, the more invisible you become, and not in a sad way, but in a powerful one. You're no longer everywhere, you're where you're needed. You no longer spread yourself thin, you conserve your energy. You spend your time with intention, and that's how you build a quiet kind of strength that lasts. Maybe no one tells you directly, maybe there's no applause, but deep down, you know, the way you've started to live, the way you've started to think, the way you've pulled away from chaos and leaned into calm. These are not random changes. These are whispers, subtle signs that you're already living differently, that you've stepped into a new chapter, not loudly, but gracefully. Because that's what the real upper class looks like. Not a performance, not a brand, but a calm, confident, inward sense of power. And once you begin to feel it, you'll never trade it for noise again.